fire away.
Is Mike and Kevin the only two guys who's been pushing for disclosure on the Lobster Advisory Committee?
On the Lobster Advisory? On the Lobster Advisory Committee, they've been the most vocal. On the Lobster Advisory Committee, Lobster Advisory Committee members have issues with the scallop fishery from from the district I represent, from just this side of Sambro, all the way to Kentville. There's a lot of LFA representatives that had issues with scallop fishing. For this particular issue, they're the ones that have been the most vocal.
Just the two guys.
They've been the most vocal. But again, I wanted, most lobster representatives have issues with one issue or another when it comes to scallop fishing.
I'd say Roger LeBlanc would be third. Okay.
Yeah.
And then more Shag Harbor probably before.
So that pretty well covers the whole area, right?
Well, of Shelburne County, yes, of Shelburne County. You go into the Pubnicos and the wedge sports, it's not as controversial. They have concerns. They have concerns on lobster bycatch, and they have concerns that you have, but they're not quite as vocal as the representatives that I just mentioned. Especially given the fact over the damaged lobsters that were here this fall, because there were none really seen north of Pubnico Point, per se. The majority of the damage was Pubnico Point east.
North of
That's where they're getting scallop in the mouth.
North of Pubnico Point.
East.
Yes, was the most lobster seen then, right? Correct?
The most in volume, although you have to consider that when comparing volumes from somebody that catches lobsters in LFA 34, like in Shelburne, LFA 34, with somebody who catches lobsters in Sambro, the numbers are not quite the same, but in Sambro, and I might as well, we're on this subject, Sambro, they had upwards of 10 to 15% of damaged lobsters in their catch. Not every day, but on certain days. So to say 10 to 15% in percentage is a lot less numbers than what we would be talking about if we said 10 to 15% here.
So
do you agree with that? I think
well,
so.
excuse me, yeah.
Yeah.
If this was the case, didn't they take any photos of these damaged lobsters or anything?
Yeah, the damage in the lobster, in the dam, like John Tremblay, who's the scientist that was asked to study this, after we started getting calls from individuals like Michael and Kevin and other interested lobster fishermen. Here, you can sit next to me.
We're there?
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
So let him, not me.
yeah. Anyway, we asked John to look at it because, I know what the first reaction was, and rightly so, I guess, from your perspective. So we asked John and others to look at the damaged lobster issue. So they started doing interviews, they started getting photos, they started sending their technicians out. And the report indicates the same type of damage. I mean, I wouldn't say 100%, but the same type with the pieces missing and so on. I don't have a copy of the report here with me. Are found east of 100 kilometers east of Halifax. So, was it more concentrated in this part? Probably, in terms of numbers. In terms of percentages, for people that fish to the east that don't catch as much as you people catch in terms of lobsters, probably close to the same percentage on some days. So that's, that's one of the reasons that we looked at it in terms of, is it directly related to the scallop fleet? And I'm not here to convince, I want to make that abundantly clear. I talked to Mike and I talked to Kevin and I got your cell numbers all. I said, do you want me to go down and talk to the group? I don't mind. I mean, I said, you know, I'm not going to go and convince him. I'll answer questions as best I can. I am not here to convince you one way or the other or change your mind.
Yeah.
You have a certain thing that you think, and I respect that. But, you know, from my perspective, I have to provide to you what I think is the evidence and the facts as basically we see them. So that's one of the points I should have made earlier. But regardless, that on the damaged lobster thing, that was one of the indicators that led us to, or DFO, to think that, you know, it wasn't all primarily related to science or to the scallop fleet. And in the damaged lobster report, the scientist does say they can't rule out that there's some related to scallop damage. They can't rule it out. However, the most likely cause, and this is the way it's written, and there'll be a copy of it available on the internet soon, very soon. The most likely cause is the hurricane, and the reason why this hurricane versus other hurricanes, I don't know. Yes, please.
You say you had scientific studies. Now, if it was done because of the storms, I fished all this coast from one end of Nova Scotia to the other. If you get down in the Lewisburg area, going around that part of the coast, right up around the Cape North, anywhere you want to talk about down there, 90% of the lobsters is caught within a few hundred feet of rock cliffs. We should have devastated them. There shouldn't be nothing left down there. We're catching lobsters here in 30 fathom water. Don't try to tell me that you didn't see damage up in there. Why not? Any fisherman sitting in here has got to understand, and they know that when it comes the time of year that we're fishing, the lobsters on the way off of the coast. They're not on the way in. The lobsters were damaged, and then they were moving off. But a lot of them stayed there. Don't tell me. First license I had when I was 12 years old, and I fished after the groundhog. And don't tell me about the hurricane we had went by here last year, because I must have had an awful sleep somewhere along the way. I never seen no sea that would have done that kind of damage. The year I had the Frederick and Sisters built, that winter in February, we had one of the worst storms ever known here in the wintertime. I had crabs.
Let's not argue.
I'm just explaining about the damage problem.
And I've heard this as well, that there was other worse storms.
We don't stop the Digby fleet from coming in here.
Well, this is what it's about.
But damaged lobsters in 30 fathom water shouldn't be to do to a hurricane.
Well,
Like,
I'm not an oceanographer. All I can tell you is it was a major
Destroy them in
event.
30 fathoms, why didn't you destroy them in 5 and 6 fathoms? If it was the hurricane, that the scientist contradicting himself. He's got to be very, you must think I'm awful stupid. And the rest of these fishermen sitting around there too.
All I can tell you, okay, they did a comparison of the wave heights they just did the last one we had there, the Hurricane Juan. It came through in
How come that didn't destroy some?
September. I think it was September. Anyway, the maximum wave for Juan was 20 meters. And the maximum wave for this past one, Noel, was 27 meters, so it was even more intense. Well, you know, I can't, if you don't believe it, I mean, I can't.
Well, I just told you, if this is the case then, how come it can damage lobsters in 30 fathoms of water, and it don't hurt any? You ask the fishermen that's fishing on top of Seal Island Ridge and around. How come them lobsters, they should have just pulverized them. There should be nothing left there, period. They should be all gone.
Yeah.
And the same way you go down the coast. The farther you go down the coast, you talk to any of the fishermen. You can go, like I said, you go to Lewisburg. I fished out of there. I know why they lost the fishermen. They can't haul some days when the wind's right because they fish so close to the rock piles and in against the shore that if that was the case, when that went by there, it should have killed everything they had. That is not the problem. The problem is right where those draggers are going.
Okay, I understand the argument you're trying to make over the depth of the water, and I can't explain that.